you don't have to hold anything back. But when you're in school, you feel like, I gotta write proper. I shouldn't write this. Maybe my teacher might feel a certain way about it. Sometimes I get writer's block writing a school essay about myself, because I had to write one about myself and I couldn't because I didn't know if I should put this in there, if I should put you in school you kind of contradict yourself and you kind of like, you know, cover up some stuff. Like you kind of hide yourself in school, but when you're outside of school, it's like you open yourself up, you unfold everything.
Don't force yourself.
I'm doing good.
All right, let's give Faith our attention.
It's called Sticks and Stones. Sticks and stones would break my bones, but your words stay with me forever. I got your words running through my mind, the things you said to me 1,000 times, and yet I still cry because I can't put a Band-Aid over you calling me a nigga. I can't hold back my emotions at the thought of you making an outcast of me. You got me pinned down with hate, when it's more than any other physical bind you can put me in. Instead of spitting the words at me that have my mind aching for painkillers, I'd rather have you hit me over the head with a brick. Or maybe even twist my arm, because then I can heal my broken wounds and pray that you don't hurt me again. Because sticks and stones may break my bones, but your words stay with me forever.
When I write how I feel down on paper, I just released everything that there is on it. I just told the paper how I felt. The paper was my friend. And I can share that with other people.
What I want to do today is give people opportunity to share, but I thought we would get started by doing a poetry exercise. And a lot of times you just need inspiration or something to write about. So what I'd like you to do is look at the clementine that you have in front of you. How many senses do we have?
Hearing, smelling, and
tasting.
Yeah, I forgot what I had to.
Yeah, you have 5 senses. So what I'd like you to do in your journal is to write a description for each of the 5 senses around this
Can you write about
clementine.
I'm joking. Calm down. You're acting all seriously angry and stuff.
Sam, where did you get that word from? I had that one first.
It's sweet, it's juicy. Next week, if you bring these back, I want to give you an opportunity to decorate your journals. This is one, my most recent one, and I use mine, I write more for personal enjoyment too, I think. When I use a notebook like this, I just write whatever I'm thinking, sometimes poetry, sometimes like a journal reflection or whatever questions I might have. I like to do a lot of lists.
Well, I was going to say something, but never mind.
Well, I like fruit, and I love shoes, and The Real Princess Diaries is just like, since this is going to be like my journal or diary, I thought it was a great title for it.
And this is this one. And today I have got journals about article who I really love, the musician people who sing songs. Usher. And this one is Obama, like our President Obama. So he can save the world, he can change everything. And I'm so proud he's the first Black American in the White House. Esto las máquinas están buenas, caballeros.
I don't understand. I didn't You're saying that she takes care of him. She's right. That's what I'm She married him.
We have a number of English language learners who come to our school project. And they're still developing their proficiency and confidence in the English language. And one of my big gripes with what we do or don't do in schools is that we don't teach about language in its written and oral form explicitly. Kids aren't just born writing in mainstream American English or in academic English. That's not something that you come to school with. That's something that has to be taught to you.
I'm Sambusa, the Flavors of Friends crazy brotherhoods of soccer and friendships. I am who is courageous. I am Abdi Hirabi, living my life in harmony, Somalian American, doing whatever I can to succeed.
There's no guidelines. You can write whatever you want and about anyone or anything. And I think that usually for like writing classes, like there's like a lot of times it's not even like an interesting thing.
You don't have to use proper English, proper writing English. You just pretty much write the way you want to write. You don't even have to spell the words right when you're doing it. And for a classroom, it has to be written right, written in a specific way. But when you're writing for yourself, you can pretty much do whatever you want. You can write however you want with it.
Well, we don't want to do a disservice and ignore their grammatical mistakes, right? I don't want to set the kids up for failure and ignore it. So I might say, okay, let's say in a poem, they're using da instead of the, D-A instead of T-H-E. I might say, okay, is this how you want to come off? Is this the persona? Is this how you want this to be? Is this the authenticity of your piece, right? And I say, okay, we're going to go. If they say yes, I say, okay, we're going to go with that. And then we have a little conversation to the side. If this were a college essay, a professor might not be okay with that.
Writing is a process. It's a thinking process. It's a physical process. So after the searching and organizing and thought process, it eventually leads to physical act of scribing or keyboarding or grabbing your charcoal stick or whatever and inscribing something somewhere, making a permanent record of those thoughts.
Ask these kids how many of them have blogs. It's almost all of them do. And it's really, they want to record what they're doing. They want someone to witness their lives. They're all over the internet. It's what they do. They just don't like to call it writing.
It is a digital world, and this generation of young folks are very comfortable with that, and it's not even something that they think about. And it's very different from my generation, but I think that we are ill-advised not to pay attention to the types of things that young people are participating in beyond the school walls, where they are indeed writing. And I think there's something to learn from the level of focus and attention and participation that young people are engaged in these formats, because that thing can be transferred into other forms of writing, in particular those that we expect in school. One of the students that we work with in the project, he has multiple websites and blogs and things that he upkeeps and maintains every day. That takes a lot of time. You know, I talk to some students who say they are texting and on Facebook for upwards of 10 hours a day. Who has 10 hours a day? So if you can devote that kind of commitment to digital authoring, and if we take that passion and focus and put it in other forms, I think there's something to that. So young people are definitely composing and writing in many ways. I think what it means is we have to expand our definition of what we mean by composing or writing.
Poetry has always been at the front of the stage. You look at the Black arts movement, or even the Civil Rights movement. Dr. King was a poet. He was a poet. Malcolm X was a poet. Fannie Lou Hamer was a poet. You know, all those folks are poets. You know, and they use their pen very well, very well. And you see how the following came because of what they wrote and what they really spoke about on stage. How they spoke in front of those audiences, the people, was very poetic, very poetic.
But I write to remind everyone that everyone is truly unique. See, writing is not my passion. It's my life, and after that, there is only death. But every stroke of this pen gives me new breath, new hope that this world may one day change from this misguided, deranged, and confined to the chains that they have around our brains. Writers unite, because our pen will lead the revolution of minds, lead the revolution of hearts, and tear apart this corrupt establishment.
When you write, you're becoming a part of a conversation. You're becoming a part of a movement. You're adding your voice to a collective voice. And so it should in some way move us higher or move us in a new direction. So I came to Syracuse University in 2008, and I came here as a professor in English education. Writing is a passion of mine. And one of the things that was important to me coming to Syracuse University was also becoming grounded in the community and situating myself and my family here as members of the Syracuse community. So in 2008, I attended several community forums. One of them was about the state of education for African American children. And it was important to me to be a part of that conversation because I too was kind of navigating the school system for my own child. During that forum, I remember hearing really a lot of frustration from families and parents about the educational situation for their students, many saying that their kids couldn't read, they couldn't write, they were dissatisfied with the educational resources, the teaching. And so I, as someone who is very passionate about writing, very passionate about education, and someone who had some capital as a professor at Syracuse University, I said, what can I do, not only as a community member, but also as a faculty member and as a writing scholar to support the needs of youth, families in the community. And so I just started offering writing workshops, which was something, as a writing teacher, I said, well, let me just go find space in a local library. So I was doing some work at Beecham Library on summer of 2009 now. And young people just started showing up on a Saturday for writing workshops. And it just became very apparent to me that there was a growing need and an interest for young people just to write creatively, but also to receive support in terms of academic writing as well. So that grew and continued to grow. And in 2009, I sponsored my first conference, Saturday conference. The program, we've called it Writing Our Lives. And on a Saturday in November at the Dunbar Community Center here in Syracuse, about 100 students came on a Saturday to just write. And we offered workshops in poetry, journalism, fiction, creating comics, just a range of multiple genres. And I was just amazed by the outpouring. At the time, my dean, Doug Bicklin, attended that conference, and I think he too was just kind of overwhelmed by the presence of young people. When you have these myths, in terms of the scholarship and in society about what young people don't do or won't do, and then you see that, one, that's false, but to see them so actively engaged and excited about writing on a Saturday when there are a plethora of other things that they could have been doing. He was really inspired by that and wanted to further support my efforts to try to help cultivate the youth writing community. So Doug, his medium in terms of his own scholarship is film and documentary. And he said, I think you should document this. You have something really special here, and we wanted to get the word out to other people and let other people see the kinds of things that are happening here in Syracuse. And also, if you do a documentary, it could also be a pedagogical tool, something you can use in your teaching. And so I said, okay, that's a good idea. I've never done film before. I wouldn't know where to start. He had worked with Thea St.Omer on some other projects for the School of Education and some of his film projects. And so he introduced the two of us and thought that it would be a good pairing given the type of work that she had been doing. And I didn't realize at the time when he introduced the two of us, I knew Thea because I had attended the screening of her film Nigger, which she screened at the Maxwell Auditorium at Syracuse University the year prior. So I had seen her work, but, again, I wasn't familiar with her. So Doug introduced us. My first meeting with Thea was, we vibed instantly. My thing about anytime you do research or even with film, and you go into a community to kind of document their lives or their experiences, I'm always a little skeptical about the perspective and the person and what their intentions are. She really wanted to just learn about what was going on. You know, she was an ethnographer in many ways, and so she just said, well, let me just start, you know, coming to some of the programs and just meet people, you know, talk to people, participate, engage, and that's what we did. So before she even began filming, at the time we had the conference, but then we also were doing some after-school programming at one of the local high schools, and Thea just started to join me after school, learning the community, learning the environment, and from that, when she started to film, it was almost as if she wasn't there. It didn't feel intrusive because
That's important.
It was
Yeah.
so important
Yeah.
because she was already a part of, you know, the community, and she really tried to understand from my perspective, as well as the young people, why Writing Our Lives and why these out-of-school writing spaces were so important to us. And so that's where this documentary, Writing Our Lives, or Writing Beyond School Walls, came about.
In watching the film, one of the things I appreciated was the authenticity of the students' reaction. I have not. First of all, you had such luxury in the fact that you were encouraged
Yes.
to document your work. Because I've been doing this work since 2000 in earnest. I've done workshops on and off for years, and started with workshops. Actually longer than that, because in 1995, I think, or 94, I started working with XO as a mentor. And because it's so hard to get one-on-one mentorship for the NAACP XO program, I workshop the kids at Happy Endings because I was running an open mic there. So my niece actually got me involved. I got a call from the XO committee saying, oh, we want you to, your niece said that you would be her coach for the XO competition. And I'm going, oh, sure. She hadn't discussed it with me. She was 15, you know. She just, Aunt Georgia will take care of it, right? So I started coaching a group of 10 students who, our thing was we're competing with each other and against everybody else. But I was able to start that process of peer critique and working as a team to everyone rise to a level. So in 1994, one of my students took the national gold medal.
Wow, awesome.
And that's a great story. Sometime I'll have to tell you that story. It's a terrific story of how she came to make the decisions about the poem she was doing. But anyway, since that time, and now it's 2015, I spent many years in arts integrated learning through the New York State Council on the Arts in many schools throughout New York State. I've done after school programs, and now with the Young Authors Academy here at the Downtown Writers Center, we're closing in on our 4th anniversary. Working with young people, I have documented very little. I have a lot of stories to tell, but I don't have what you have. But the fact that Thea went in and became part of the community also allowed her to be invisible in a way. She was no longer an intrusion. She was part of the community, and she was just a grown-up they didn't pay attention to, probably. So her camera wasn't intrusive either. So the responses, I've seen a lot of documentary evidence of the effectiveness of arts integrated learning over the years, and the power of language, the value of what we do with young people. And one of the reasons why I do it is that poetry saved my life. You know, it has at 3 different times, but as a teenager, it definitely saved my life. So knowing that from personal experience has always fueled me to work with young people. And when I watched the documentary, when these very earnest conversations, these comments from the heart of, this is my life. This was necessary for me, and I'm a stronger human being now. It was very powerful work. And I think if it had been somebody just saying, oh, we're coming in on Saturday and we're filming you, then they would have been, but they were used to her.
They were used to it,
And that, they were also comfortable with her because it was easy to be comfortable with her. I didn't know her very well, but she attended our readings, she filmed here. And she was such an important part of the community, and everybody's still in shock.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was what really, as I think, reflect back and remember, and what resonated for me is her role as a filmmaker. She was about building relationships, you know, so it extended beyond just the film, but she really got to know those students, the teachers, because there were times that I wasn't there, that I wasn't present, that she went around and met with people and worked with people. So she really became a part of the fabric of the program in many ways. But to your point around hearing the students' voices, that was one of the other reasons that I really wanted to do the work and to start writing our lives. There was a young man who participated. He wasn't in this film, but he participated in the programs, and he said, I need writing because it's like breathing for me. You know, it saved my life. So that was really, you know, it's so important to cultivate and create those kinds of spaces. I don't think I realized the power of it when I started doing the work. I didn't, because it was something that came so natural for me.
Right.
The documenting of it and then hearing other people's stories validated and kind of helped to raise my own awareness about how important this work is. And so now, you know, 7 years later, as we continue to do the conference, the after-school programs, the summer institutes, and when I get tired and I'm like, okay, I don't think there's a need, or, you know, we have this conference coming up, how are we going to get 100 kids to come? I don't think it's that important. I'm instantly reminded, and I think having this film, every time I revisit it, is a way for me to stay, you know, committed to it and to realize the importance and the utility of the work. So,
you bring up a couple of things that I want to go back to. One is that building relationship. I think what I learned when I was working with Partners for Arts Education and through the New York State Council on the Arts, Arts and Education network that was thriving in the 90s and up until about 2008. What we had was that notion that relationship building was really important in education, and that empowering people to be who they were, and not pushing in with a program. You know, that things are grown organically from the need. That was such an important lesson. And at times where, you know, I was guilty of trying to push in, I learned pretty quickly that you don't do that. You don't do that. Yeah. But if you answer a need and you build relationship, you can build trust with anybody.
That's right.
And that inclusion, safe space, the ability to speak your own truth will be trusted if it's given authentically, which is, that's a core value of the Young Authors Academy. It's a very diverse community of young people, but when they get here, it's really common of the first week a young person will come, and we're middle and high school. If they say, I don't fit in school, the kids say, oh, you belong here. This is where you know, this is where we are. You know, every so often we'll have something that there'll be some bickering and we have to talk about. We don't do that here.
Right.
You know, we're all, it's just understood. We're writers here together, and it doesn't matter how you express yourself, what you're saying. There's honesty, truth, and inclusion. This is a safe space. And the other piece is when you let it grow organically. If your funding is such that you have to hit certain numbers, you know, and it's about numbers, it's not, and it's about product, not process, it's not going to have the same level of authenticity and buy-in.
That's right.
When you are given the opportunity to grow as the need grows and answer the need as you recognize it, because you've built relationship within community and you've built relationship with the people with whom you're working. Doesn't matter if it's young people or adults. Then you have investment. Authenticity and true buy-in is built on trusted relationship.
Yes.
And the other thing that I've learned is trusted relationship is built on the ability to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
Let me find out.
Yeah.
Teach me.
Yeah.
What do I need to know? I'm always asking our kids, what do I need to know? And I think that was a core value for Thea. She was investigating, what do I need to know?
Yeah.
What will the world show me? Not do I see something so much as, but what will it show me through the lens?
Yeah. She didn't go into it with, okay, this is what, because yeah, she interviewed me and we talked about kind of what the overall goals, but we didn't know what we were going to end up with. We were willing to kind of go down that rabbit hole together and see where it would take us, and it was a lot of learning in the process. Some of the things that you just said really strike a chord with me when I think about where Writing Our Lives is now and some of the challenges that we've had over the years, which I'm sure you've probably experienced too. But yeah, you know, trying to, a lot of the work that I do, you know, as a university professor, I connect it to my teaching and somewhat to my scholarship, but definitely to my teaching. So one of the, I would say, the hallmarks of Writing Our Lives has been that I'll bring my student teachers or students in my class. You know, I've taught a course on 21st century youth writers, civic engagement, activism. And so students from those classes come and they do the work in Writing Our Lives, undergraduate students, graduate students. And so there's also kind of an apprenticeship and a mentoring into this process of how we do the work. And so I think at times I definitely have felt a sense of, I don't know if obligation is too strong of a word, but a responsibility to the learning of those students, right, to make programs happen. But that threatens the authenticity sometimes, you know, because like we had an incident just this Tuesday at one of the community centers where we have Writing Our Lives, where there was some tension between the students and the staff members there, almost to the point of a physical altercation. And so the staff member said, you know, center's closed, everybody's out. And I have graduate students there, like, I'm supposed to be doing this work right now, and the kids all have to go. And so there's a constant, for me, having to remind them that when you do work in community spaces, you have to kind of go with the flow. You know, we're not architects of this. We are there to learn, and we're there to participate. So I can't guarantee for you what's going to happen. You know, I can't guarantee for you. Students are not required, the middle and high school students are not required to come to our program. It's their choice. And you have to honor and respect that student's desire or need or whatever it is that they're taking from the program. At the same time, we have students who will come to the after-school program that's in one of the middle schools, and they want to have snack because sustenance is important. And we'll have writing activities, things planned, and they may not want to do those things. You know, they may just want to come, have snack, and hang out because we're in the library, a space that, ironically, they don't get to go into during the academic day.
That's a whole other conversation.
Right.
So, we have a lot to say about
that. So after school, it's like, oh, I can go into the library. Right. You know, I can be in a space that is off limits for me during the academic day. And there's a program, Writing Our Lives, that's happening here. I'll see what they're about, but I just want to be around. I want to be in the space. I want to be free. I want to just, you know, just be able to be for this next hour, hour and a half. And so we try to honor where the students are and meet the students where they are. And so, you know, as you were talking about that, that's something that I definitely have learned and have to continue to remind myself when I feel like, one or two students showed up today. Well, those one or two students that showed up, they showed up because they wanted to be there for whatever reason. And, you know, they're getting something from it because they don't have to be there. So
it's not quantitative.
No.
And I have a very different journey into this work. Non-academic, very in fact, in the 90s, I was trying to figure out where do I fit in because I was active in the slam movement. And after coming out of 10 years of not writing and discovering poetry slam and going, ooh, I want to do that. You know, I want that became my drug of choice for a while, you know. But I didn't really, after a while, I was already in my 40s, and it was really skewing towards youth. And I wasn't fitting in, and I wanted to investigate poetry from a different perspective than just spoken word sensibility. And then I didn't fit into academia either. But I was starting to do a lot of community work with organizing readings and producing spoken word events. slam master, working with AXO. And I said, well, how do I identify myself for a business card?
What do I call myself?
What's my title? Tell me, please. And I came up with community poet. And that's who I've named myself since 1994. Yeah. I'm community poet. And claiming that role of poet first in my life was a huge change. So I have been teaching in non-traditional ways, non-traditional settings. But what I learned is this lesson that you're giving your students, and it's very authentic, that you never know what's going to happen in a classroom.
No.
When they get done with their, even if they're already in classrooms, they know it, but teaching is performance art.
Oh, yeah.
And you have to be able to improvise on the drop of a hat. You have to know when the teachable moment is as opposed to the curriculum, which is why Common Core is decimating education.
That's right, yeah.
In the way it's constructed right now.
Yeah,
because it's constructed by politicians and corporations. So we don't have that ability to be authentic and answer the moment and the need in the teachable moment.
Right.
My best lessons that I now teach consistently came out of those moments of either resistance or questioning, you know, query. Well, how did that happen? How did okra come to the United States? You know, a group of 6th graders in Watkins Glen were reading Nikki Giovanni's Knoxville, Tennessee, and talking about okra, and some of the kids knew what it was and some didn't. And then that wound up leading to us using the smart board to trace the journey of okra from Africa to India, Africa to the United States. And how did it get to the United States? It was the slave trade. So we weren't talking about poetry anymore. We weren't even talking about Nikki Giovanni anymore. We were talking about what it would be like if you were carrying that on your body so that you would have something from home. You know, and then how did that become, you know, how did that become more and more and more? If I had to stick to a tight curriculum and feel that that's what I had to do, that discovery never would have happened.
Yeah.
You know, and the opportunity to freely go those directions rather than stay to some scripted lesson plan is a valuable tool. And it's the most authentic thing. But in after school, they're choosing to be there, even on Saturdays. Our kids are choosing to be here on Saturday. They don't, this is a voluntary program. We started with 6. We have been granted funding that allows us to grow organically. It's mostly word of mouth. And we have a completely diverse group of students who we originally planned 4 8-week sessions. They asked us to go to 10. If we take more than a month off, I get all kinds of, Miss Popoff, when can we come back? When can we come back? We do a retreat day in the wintertime. They asked for 2 hours instead of an hour and a half. Why? They wanted more time to critique each other. They know the difference between critique and criticism. They're learning the critical skill of looking at a body of work and seeing what's working and saying, you can improve here. And that's the language we use. You know, they're supportive. They're producing great work. They're publishing. They're creating a great sense of community and acceptance. You know, we have students on the autism spectrum. We have students from many different cultures and ethnicities.
Sure.
We have students from different socioeconomic classes all coming together, and they are one. It is absolutely stunning. Some days, on Saturday morning, do I want to go to work for a 6th day? Not so much, you know. And I get here and sit down with the kids, get my poets going, and we talk about the poets. You know, the fiction kids write about fiction, but the poets get into things a little differently. And now that they're really strong as a unit, we're talking about so many different social issues. We're talking about gender, we're talking about class, we're talking about politics, but in a way that they are really free to say what they think. They jack me up every so often. We had a really interesting conversation about drag, you know, and that I had a certain opinion of it that they were saying, but I don't think you should look at it that way.
Okay.
Like, all right, I'll hear you. You know,
You know,
that's great.
It's interesting what you're
talking about just reminds me of a lot of times when people question the validity of out-of-school literacy spaces, and they are challenged to see the connection between the work that happens in these spaces with the tasks or the expectations in school. Right. And everything that you just described that the students are doing in the Writing Center, when I think about the students in our program, those are the types of skills that, if we look at Common Core, those are the types of things that they're saying they should be doing. But yet, students come to these out-of-school spaces to be engaged in these skills in more authentic ways. So I think that's one of the things that, as an academic, where I'm constantly trying to make my work accessible to a more scholarly, audience, to understand the connection between what we do here and what students have to do in school. That's not my ultimate goal. I say I'm not trying to meet Common Core standards or help students with standardized tests, but at the same time, I understand that if students are able to, do the kind of research that they're doing to understand where okra came from here, all those skills are skills that easily translate into the types of things that they should be doing in school. Right. But it's upon us to help them and to help teachers to see, how you can make those connections and validate and support the things that students are doing outside of school.
I fully agree. And the other thing that I really appreciate is that it's not school. So they engage in a different way. Mm-hmm. But they also, I get feedback from parents often about the underlying value of participation, that within their school life, that their critical thinking skills have increased, that their writing skills have increased, that their ability to express themselves is growing, self-confidence. There's been a remarkable change in a number of kids. And it's because they can be free to be who they really are. When they come to our programs, they don't have to front. Nobody's there except their own peers. And they have the freedom to say what they want as long as it isn't hurtful. Right. That is truly valuable. And I know people in programs, Urban Word, in New York, totally based on that same premise. Young Chicago authors, Houston writers in the schools, Seattle writers in the schools. Everybody who's doing this work knows this. There's a huge network of writers in the schools through AWP, and all of us know this lesson. But the other thing, the training aspect that you're giving your students, we're doing it with our students. Because we started, last fall, I started an internship program for our juniors and seniors. If they are in their junior or senior year and they have participated in at least 2 sessions of the Young Authors Academy, they can intern with us for their community engagement credits. And we've been able to start a college internship program. We have probably 10 of our graduates are in college now. It's somewhere between their freshman and senior year. We have a group of kids that will be going off to college next year, and they've published an anthology of their work as a fundraiser. They do great things, but mostly we just come here and write.
Yeah, I mean, the students in the film, many of them are now juniors or seniors in college. Some of the students who I was working with, starting in 2008, they've graduated and now are professionals or, doing. The young man who said, I need writing, it's like breathing to me. He just applied he's kind of traveled the world. He just applied for an internship with BuzzFeed writing. Cool. And it's called the Emerging Writers Fellowship. So, one of the things that I think has been really important too about these spaces is introducing young people to professional writers or to community poets so that they can see where writing isn't just something you do for school. Right. But there are ways that writing can sustain you. It can be your life's work. Whether you're a writing teacher, whether you're a poet, whether you are, now with social media and 21st century writing, young people, there are all kinds of new careers that are possible for young people. So they need to see, we've introduced them to illustrators and artists, to, people who are, published authors. That's always an awesome thing. This fall, I'm bringing Kwame Alexander, who's a poet, who just won the Newbery Medal for his book, The Crossover, to SU as part of our urban lecture series. But he's going to do a visit with some of the students at Danforth Middle School. And so the boys will all read his book and then be able to engage with him, a poet, around, the writing of his text and around, his own life. And so I think it's just important for them to be able to see that there are people just like me who write and who are proud to be writers. Because there's certainly, I'm thinking of some of the boys who come to our after-school program that's at the middle school. To say, the program is called Writing Our Lives. So just by entering into those library doors, you're identifying yourself as someone who is interested in writing. Right. And so there's still a relationship that they have with it where it's like, okay, I'm going to come into this space, but I don't like writing, And I'm like, okay, but they stay. So, you say you don't like writing, but you're coming into this space. And one of the things that, I realized, and we started talking about this earlier, is that, one, they like to write. Their definition of writing is often, it's defined by whatever the school says it is. So it's writing for this timed, test or whatever. So in that sense, they don't like writing. But when we start to break down the different kinds of writing and expand the notion of what writing is, then they can see themselves connected to it and say, oh, I'm drawing a comic, or, I'm working on this story file on the computer. That's a form of writing. That's a form of composing. So it's part of that, helping them to see that. But one of the reasons I know that they come into the library space is because there are books in the library. Right. So, and the library space tends to be off limit during the days, but they can come into the space and they can read the anime and the graphic novels and the comics and the, all the different books and magazines that are there that they don't have access to during the day. They have access to it there. So there's this, we hear this deficit framing of students of color around their literacy, around, the achievement gap, that they don't read, they can't read, they're struggling readers. And here we have young people who I witness who are hungry for books, that they are stuffing them in their backpacks. And I'm like, wait, you can't leave out this library with that book.
Let me tell you a story. I used to teach at a workshop in the summers at Hillbrook Detention Center. So I had a young man, oh God, this is such a funny story. He wanted me to bring in Tupac's book. Let's Popoff, bring Tupac. I said, I don't have Tupac's book. He goes, why not? I said, well, right now I can't afford it. And he goes, steal it. I said, no, I really can't do that. And he said, well, that's what I used to do. I used to go to Barnes & Noble and pick out books and stuff them in my book bag, and then I'd run, oh, the bus is coming, and I ran out the door. And the first thing that he stole was books. I did have to remind him that he was in jail. I'm not. But that idea that his criminal path started as a child wanting access to books.
Well, the sad thing about it, just as I'm listening to you and as I think about this, when we historicize this, that it used to be against the law for Black people to read.
Yeah.
So
and for women.
Right. So 2015, 21st century, we're still seeing this relationship to literacy that is not accessible. So that's really troubling for me. It's really troubling for me.
Yeah, I'm still disturbed at the concept that any public school library is considered off limits during the school day. That access point. part of the Young Authors Academy is they get journals, pens. I have to reorder a combination dictionary, thesaurus. We often get books that we can give them. Yeah. And giving books away is very important
we do the
to
same.
the program.
Yeah.
You own this.
Yes.
You know, you take this and take it home.
And it's so important to them to, you know, last year in one of the programs, I gave 20 copies of Jacqueline Woodson's Brown Girl Dreaming, the national book winner. And the girls, when I handed it to them, this is mine?
Yeah.
I get to keep it?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah,
you do.
It's yours.
Yeah, you can take it home.
Yeah. And then I had teachers say, well, aren't you worried they're going to lose it? They may, but it's theirs.
Right.
And it's that the act of giving a book, you know, it's really powerful.
And giving with no strings attached.
Right.
This, you take it.
Right.
You do. This is a gift.
Right.
I'm not going to check on you later. Do you have it? But I see the thesaurus come out of backpacks the next week.
They still have it.
You know, they have it. If they don't have it, it's not my business. I don't care. By the way, you know Bronx Masquerade by Nikki Grimes,
yes.
right?
And when she came here, we brought her back in 2008. And she did a whole thing with the school. And no, I mean, it's just so important for students to have those opportunities. Right. I just feel it's really important and it's so powerful to give young people books. You know, I recently was asked by Scholastic to be a part of a project called Reading Makes the World Possible. I think that's the title of the book, but it was a whole movement to get different authors and teachers to write about the way that reading and books changed their lives. And, you know, it was a little essay that I contributed. Walter D. Myers wrote for it, Kwame, and a number of different folks. And in mine, I wrote about, you know, my own childhood and being someone who, as a child, was very to myself, but I found myself in books.
Yeah.
You know, and there were characters like Ponyboy Curtis from The Outsiders and Celie from The Color Purple and Carrie from Stephen King's Carrie. Very different genres. But all of those characters were like people that, even though we weren't exactly the same and our lives, histories, and experiences were very different, I connected to their stories and to their humanity. And I, you know, was able to find myself in those texts and in the words of the books. You know, Alice Walker, for me, has been a mentor teacher, you know, just in the power and the beauty of the language and the words. And so for me, to give young people, Brown Girl Dreaming, Jacqueline Woodson's text is just beautifully written. The poetry is so beautiful.
Reading was everything to me, and then writing became even more.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
And then it became my way of being heard, even if nobody read it. It was on the page.
It was on the page.
I have it.
Yeah.
And now my young people, I keep telling them, I'm not even bringing in my high school poetry because you guys write so more fluently and beautifully than I did. And everybody thought I was pretty talented, you know. But not like them. Their command is wonderful. But there's another value I want to just step back to for a second as far as the things that underneath our programs that are unspoken. We stress with our participants that this will help them get into college. That because they've participated, they have a plus factor on their applications. We encourage them to publication outside of what we publish, but we also publish them because those are plus factors for and especially for students who would be at a perceived deficit in that world anyway. Yeah. Having these credits is valuable. And we do anticipate that you're college bound.
That's right.
Or you're professionally bound one way or another. Maybe it'll be a professional trade. And our society seems to have lost some value for that too. But that these are plus factors that show not just that you're participating, but that you show up on time, you follow through, you do all these things. There's discipline involved. And that discipline is a tremendous value.
Yeah. Well, and that these programs are not about, it's not missionary work. It's not patronizing young people. It's not. It really is valuing them as writers. Right. I have an example, and I'm just thinking about We're Writing Our Lives, where we are today and what some of the trends have been recently. And I think it just has to do with where we are in the world and our society, where we see a lot of social movements that really, the revolution is being led by young people today.
Yep.
We look at issues around racial violence, police brutality, the issues of inequity, and the challenge of social justice in our world today. I think young people are really leading the march. They're leading the movement. And writing and digital tools have been a way in which they are. And so with Writing Our Lives, a lot of our work has been around activism and civic engagement because, as we talked earlier about the authenticity of the work, that's where young people have wanted to go with it. So, you know, our themes for conferences have been, you know, around Youth Lives Matters, or this year the theme is Be Free, and it's around freedom and freedom of humanity. There's one of the youth writers who's been coming. She's a junior now in high school, and she's been attending since she was in middle school. And I worked with her. It was shortly after the killing of Michael Brown that she Facebooked a number of us and said, you know, we got to do something. This is happening all over the world, all over the country, but it's also happening right here in Syracuse too. And you know, I want to do something. And so we all, myself and some of the other Writing Our Lives facilitators, kind of encouraged her. Said, well, what do you want to do? You know, we will support you. And she, you know, decided that she was going to have a protest right down here in downtown Syracuse. That she created a hashtag, a Facebook group, a poster. She did all of the marketing for it, the promotion. She prepared a speech to give, so we, you know, work with her on that. She also was concerned about issues of sort of the school to prison pipeline here in Syracuse, and so she wrote something to the school district, to the school board, that she would then go to a school board meeting and deliver that. So she started to use her writing skills as a means for change, to actually enact change. And to your point around publication, I was invited by one of my scholarly outlets to write a collaborative community piece around the Writing Our Lives work. And I said, you know, wouldn't it be awesome to co-author something with this student who's a junior in high school, one of the Writing Our Lives facilitators, and myself. So across this incident. Yeah. So there's a piece now that she has published documenting the work that she's been doing with writing and activism, where she's definitely college bound. She definitely is someone who has a bright future, and she has this on her resume to say, at 16, I published in in a scholarly journal. So I think it's important for students to be cultivated to be leaders, but also to have real authentic opportunities with real audiences in terms of getting their work out. You know, so when we do spoken word poetry, yeah, we can do it in this room, but we also have the underground poets and verbal blend and slams that happen all over, you know, the city, where we can get you, you know, signed up and registered to present your work to a broader audience. And so just really encouraging them to see the possibilities, even because sometimes it's just that they didn't know, and that someone needs to invite them to be a part. And so Writing Our Lives, you know, that's something that I'm really proud of, as I've seen young people kind of take the lead in keeping it going, because I know I can't keep it going myself. Right. It has to be, you know, the next generation has to be invested in it as well.
So many of the poets who come here are friends of ours, so I can prevail upon them to stick around, because they're usually here on Saturdays anyway.
Yeah.
So we've had a lot of wonderful people here. Of course, Koresh, he's come every time he comes to town. He comes to see the kids. Keith Flynn from the Asheville Poetry Review. Tarfia Fazula was here, and she came in, and she was talking about issues in Bangladesh, women in Bangladesh, because her body of work is about that right now. So we've had that same kind of opportunity to have the kids meet with and talk about craft, and they come in and they talk about the craft of poetry or the craft of writing. Like, how do you become a better writer? That the first draft is not it. That's the starting point. Right. You know, that's where you prove yourself as a writer is in what you do with the first draft to make it a powerful piece of writing that connects to, that builds a bridge. That writing is communication that builds bridges, either by saying, I'm not alone. Oh, that person felt that too? Or this is what you need to understand. You know, this is how you know about my life.
Right.
And we learn about other people, and we become more accepting of other people if we read about their experience.
Their writing.
And then we can understand that we're all humans. So we have that same that same ethic of and intention of giving students opportunity to meet with professional writers and writers of all kinds of experience, so that they can say that you can be a writer and you can do other things too. You know, I sold insurance. I sold municipal bonds. I worked retail. I waited tables. I was a secretary.
But you were still a writer.
I was a writer. You know, and I heard somebody say, who was it? It was just this week. I was watching something, and it said, you know, if you're a writer, you're always going to write, no matter what happens. There's always space for it. And I want my students to understand that. We're also teaching them a little bit of advocacy in the classroom for better ways of reading that analyze this poem, or what does this poem mean, are two very useless questions. But what do I believe the poet wants me to think, feel, believe, or understand from reading the words? And where's the evidence for my belief? That's a very valid question.
Oh yeah.
You know, and that you can present that question or analyze that poem. It's not a formula.
No.
But if you experience, examine, interpret, respond, and reflect, you will be able to answer the other question. What does the poet want me to understand?
That's right.
But then we had that conversation just Saturday, and I said, now you can present this as an option. You can say to your teacher, can we look at it in a different lens? But I did say, when it comes to the test, I have to advise you to answer the test the way the test needs to be answered.
Yeah, well, those are the codes of power, right? You know, and I think that's one of the things for me as I think about where I want this work to go, and what I always want it to be is a space to have open and honest conversations about writing, the writing that we do personally, but also the writing that we do for school. I want us to have, you know, these open conversations and dialogue about writing, the purpose of writing, the audiences for writing, being explicit with students about expectations, you know, in school, because we do them a disservice when we aren't explicit about these things. But for them to be able to, you know, to really deconstruct and unpack writing in the ways that you just described, to talk about it, and to, you know, too often in school we just assign writing.
Right.
We don't create a space within school for kids to sit down and talk about their choices, why they did this, why they picked these words, what's the intention. So when they can do that with their reading, they can take those same skills and apply it to their own writing and to each other's writing. I think that's really important. But I feel encouraged about where we're going, and I feel so encouraged about the youth, the young writers that I meet, the new writers, you know, that I meet each year. There's a 6th grader who I recently have met and am working with, and she created we did the genre of billboards and protest signs, so we had them create, and her big thing right now is school lunches. So I have a feeling that's going to be our next movement. You know, she talked about, you know, and it was interesting. We talk about the conversation and the dialogue. She chose to, you know, create a protest sign around, you know, the type of food that they're serving in the school lunches. And that incited conversation with all the other kids around her, because then everyone else could connect to her story, to her experience. And then you have a collective, and then you have a movement. So, you know, I think we're in good hands when we look at the youth writers who I also see as activists and change agents.
Sometimes just the fact that creatively they're that valuable.
That's right.
It's not even, you know, like beyond anything but the creative use of language
right.
and story and verse, you know, that they are completely affirmed as artists.
That's right.
And then voices. Voices for change. Voices for acceptance. Voices for truth. That I think we're very, very much similar, and that's the deeper mission behind our work.
Definitely.